Echoes of the Forgotten. Title: Watch. Chapter 1. The First Day. Artyom got the job as a night guard without much thought. The place was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts, wedged between empty fields and the ruins of an old industrial zone. Translogistic 4 was no longer operating in reality, but according to the paperwork, it was still listed as active. Just in case, they said, it needed guarding. The schedule was 2 days on, 2 days off. His partner on shift was a guy named Anatoly. Quiet, polite, maybe a bit odd. He didn't talk much, but there was something strange about him. Not in terms of age, but more like he had slipped through time and yet stayed behind. Artyom didn't think much of it. The first shift passed without incident. A cold guard post, instant coffee, an old radio playing somewhere in the background, and the echo of footsteps on concrete. Dim lighting that let you see everything and nothing at the same time. The warehouse itself was massive. A concrete giant wrapped in rust and overgrown weeds. Most of the rooms were locked, especially the far sector with all the container rows. Anatoly said, "Don't go there, it's empty anyway." Chapter 2. Signals. The second shift began with something small. Around 3 a.m., the radio receiver turned itself on. Static, and somewhere in the noise, almost like a whisper, a voice, calling his name. Artyom ... He shut it off immediately. Couldn't sleep afterward. An hour later, he went for a walk around the building. Near the southern wall, he heard a scraping noise. Thin, metallic, like fingernails dragging across the inside of a shipping container. He came closer. Container number 2. It was locked, yet covered with frost, even though the weather was warm. Silent inside. Then, a knock. 3 short knocks, right beneath his hand. He jumped back and never went near it again. By morning, he'd made up his mind. He was quitting. Chapter 3. Where's Anatoly? The next day, while packing his bag, Artyom waited for Anatoly to arrive for the shift change. His phone was almost dead. His nerves shot. But Anatoly never showed up. Not at 8 a.m., not at 9, not even by noon. The place remained empty. He called HR. "We'll send someone to cover the night shift." "Just hang in there." Anatoly said he was sick. Artyom had already felt something was deeply wrong, but still, against his better judgment, he stayed. Chapter 4. The disappearance. His replacement, Igor, arrived in the evening, 1905, late, pissed off after missing the bus. He pulled up to the gate, honked. No answer. He entered the premises. Silence, darkness. The guard post was empty. A mug of half-finished tea, a tea bag leaking onto a saucer. An open logbook on the cot, a handwritten line. He's not outside anymore. He's here. He's close. Footprints in the warehouse, barefoot, fading partway through. Artyom's belongings scattered, his jacket hanging by the entrance, boots neatly placed by the stairs, his phone lying on the floor next to container number 2. Everything was strangely clean. No dust, no mess, no blood, and no Artyom. Chapter 5. Investigation. The police arrived 24 hours later. They swept the area. They even brought in a sniffer dog. The scent led to container number 2, but stopped there. The container was locked. Inside, nothing. Concrete walls, covered in frost, no signs of struggle, no prints except Artyom's. No strangers detected. Surveillance, dead. The cameras had rusted away years ago. There were no witnesses. He had simply vanished. Chapter 6. Aftermath. A month passed. Then the call started. "I saw him. In a grocery store. just standing by the bread aisle. I swear he was in a cafe, same eyes, same look. I saw him on a train. I walked over, and then he just disappeared. Different cities, different witnesses. Every time, security footage showed nothing. No evidence he'd been there. But there was one thing in common. He never said a word. He just stared, straight into their eyes. And then, he was gone. Epilogue. After Artyom's disappearance, security at the warehouse was reinforced. Now, 2 guards were assigned per shift, working on a 24 hours on, 48 hours off schedule. New surveillance cameras were installed along the perimeter, inside and out, and reports were sent to the higher-ups every 4 hours. The first enhanced shift, Anatoly and Igor. 2.5 months after the incident, everything went quietly until it was time for their replacements. 2 newcomers named Daniil and Kostya. Access to the warehouse was through an intercom built into the main door. They rang it. Someone picked up immediately, said nothing, and opened the door before it even rang once. Strange, but they shrugged it off. Their shift went on, and Anatoly later submitted the report confirming handover. 4 hours later, the next one. And so it went. Everything seemed normal, until evening. Anatoly and Igor never came home. No calls. Their phones, unreachable. Anatoly had a wife. Worried, she called the warehouse to find out why her husband wasn't home. She said he mentioned on the phone, "The replacements are late. I'll wait a bit." But management claimed the handover happened in the morning. No one was delayed. Panicked, she went to the police. Detective Sergei Anatolyevich Ryabkin was dispatched to the warehouse with 2 officers. No one answered the door. The building was dark. The gate was surrounded by a 3-meter-high fence topped with barbed wire. Unable to get through, they shot the lock. Inside, silence. The walkie-talkie and service phone were lying on the desk, as if nothing had happened. But no people, no lights. They switched to flashlights. They split up to search. Ryabkin went to the central room. The others took the side areas. Near the first container, he noticed blood. Then, a body, skinned, raw, but somehow still breathing. Its eyes darted in all directions. Its mouth moved, silently trying to speak. Then, a scream from a nearby room. Ryabkin called for backup and ran. There, he saw a nightmare. One of his officers lying in a pool of blood, and over him, crouched and naked, was Anatoly. Back turned, not moving. He didn't react to the scream. Ryabkin fired a warning shot into the wall. Anatoly rose, his mouth dripping red, his eyes gone. Just dark, empty sockets. He lunged. Ryabkin opened fire, half the magazine, point blank. The body dropped. Ryabkin rushed to the officer, no pulse, his tongue torn out, his eyes gone. At that moment, the second officer radioed in. The adjacent room was a massacre, pieces of bodies mixed with clothes, blood on the walls. They returned to the first body, the skinned one. It was gone. Only bloody footprints remained, leading deeper inside. Following them, they found someone crouched behind the pipes, half in shadow. It was the same body, picking at itself, pulling out organs, intestines, liver, kidneys. They dropped to the floor like garbage. Suddenly it turned, lifted off the ground, its spine cracked, it collapsed. Just then, SWAT and patrol units arrived. At the entrance, they found 2 survivors, pale, lips blue, hair turned white. One of them, a 25-year-old man, now looked like an old man. Finale. The warehouse was immediately sealed off. Within days, the site was surrounded, not just by police, but by unknown agents without insignia. All camera footage was seized, every trace deleted. Within a week, the entire warehouse was demolished. Even the basement was flooded with concrete. Its location was erased from maps. All witnesses forced to sign NDAs. The official story: gas explosion, structural collapse. But a month later, strange incidents began in other cities. People disappeared. In their place, only bloodstains and walkie-talkies, whispering static. Sometimes, no eyes. Sometimes, no voice. They say, if you stare long enough into the dark stares back. And if you hear a knock, don't open it, even if it calls you by name. Next story. He who walks the trail. In autumn, the forest dies, but it does it beautifully. Robert knew that. He could feel something reaching for him through the leaves every time he went too far. And yet, every autumn, he returned to the thicket. At the edge of the forest stood his hut, an old, sagging one with a gnarled door that creaked even without the wind. Her windows stared out into the darkness, like eyes that had long since forgotten how to blink. For Robert, it was a refuge. It's a trap for the forest. He arrived in the late afternoon, when the sun had sunk into the brown foliage, leaving behind only a trail of fire. The forest seemed to freeze. There were no birds, no rustling, just the dull crunching of branches under his feet, and an unnatural silence, as if nature itself was holding its breath. That night he dreamed of the forest. Not as usual. It was alien, upside down. The crowns of the trees looked down, and hands paved with bark and moss nails stretched out from the ground. He woke up to the sound, not from the wind, from the voice. A quiet, barely perceptible. Robert. The morning turned out to be poisonously bright. The forest was too colorful, as if someone had painted it in a hurry, without knowing the measure. Everything seemed to be happening, strained, fake. But he still packed his backpack and went deep into the depths. The path he was following was familiar, but today it was different. It was as if someone had moved the trees, and the ground was breathing under their feet. He could feel something gently yielding under each step, not moss, not dirt. Something alive. Soon he noticed that someone was following him. Step by step, he turned around and saw no one. But the sound remained. It's like a forest. Copied it. He sped up. The air around them was thick as old wax and smelled of something rotten. He came across a stream, the one he had been resting by for years. Only now the water was cloudy, with a thin film of something oily. It wasn't him that was reflected in it. His eyes were black in the reflection. There were no pupils at all. Trying not to look, he continued on his way. But soon he was surrounded by fog, not ordinary, but dense, like cotton wool, creeping along the ground, wrapping his legs. It did not come from nature. It came from the ground. And then he saw it. The footprints, wet, long with claw marks, and something else. It was like someone's hand was walking on all fours. He pulled out a hunting knife, the only thing he had. His hand was shaking. My fingers were sticky with sweat or blood. And then he heard crying in the fog behind him. Child. Then a woman's voice, distorted, as if it sounded through rusty iron. Help. Robert came over. In a forest clearing, a pipe protruded from the ground, old, bound with mold, with broken edges. Sounds came from it, squelching, sobbing, grinding. And then, an eye peeked out from inside. One. and disappeared again. He recoiled, but there was already something behind him. Not a human being, not a beast, something elongated, as if he had been pulled out of a dream. The arms are too long. The skin is like bark, but moving, pulsating. It was looking at him, not with my eyes, but with something else. It recognized him. It was waiting, and it rushed. In an instant, Robert was on the ground. The knife flew out of his hand. The creature loomed over him, letting out a low growl, and its clawed fingers dug into the ground on either side of Robert's head. He felt for the stick, hit it, but it was useless. The creature was tougher than it looked. Through his panic, he felt power, not his own, someone else's. There's something about him. It flared up. He twisted out from under the monster and, grabbing a knife, stabbed in the side. It wasn't blood that gushed out of the wound, but a black sludge with the smell of rotting. It howled. A howl echoed through the forest, causing the trees to shake. The creature lunged at him again, but Robert managed to dodge. The battle was fast and frantic. He beat her. She vomited. His shoulder was split open, and his clothes were in tatters. The foliage underfoot turned black from their struggle. And yet, he managed to drive the knife right into his throat. It fell, writhing. Long. It's been too long. When everything was quiet, Robert was breathing heavily, standing over the body of the creature. She didn't disappear. She lay there like a broken doll. But he knew it wasn't over. This was just the first of many. The forest showed him only one of the faces. He ran. The forest wouldn't let go. The trees were crowded. The trail was gone. The knife in his hand was shaking harder than he was. He did not notice how he was back at his hut. The door was open. There is silence inside. But the fireplace was already burning. It's not firewood in it, but his clothes. Smoldering. And next to it, against the wall, there is another one. Standing in the corner, with empty eyes. He didn't move. He no longer remembered which of them was the real one. Time dragged on. He sat against the wall, feeling as if the hut was looking at him. Things slowly changed their shapes, as if the forest was whispering in their ears. Footprints appeared on the floor, wet, like after a rain, but it wasn't raining. A doll crawled out from under the bed, childish. There are no eyes, the mouth is sewn shut. She stopped a meter away from him and froze. Robert couldn't breathe. In the evening, the door opened again. No one came in. But there was a knock coming from the doorway. It was repeated. 3 strokes. Pause. 3 more. He recognized the rhythm. It was the heartbeat of his father, who had died in this hut many years ago. Robert was a child then, or was it suggested to him? Flashes of memory hit his temples, an old photograph of him standing in the woods. One, without parents, and a blurred silhouette behind. He went outside. The forest was silent, but now there was something new in it breathing. It was everywhere, as if the entire forest had become one being. It whispered, "Stay." A figure appeared in the distance again, the same as in the fog. She was walking towards him, and her every move seemed to peel away the layers of reality. There are shadows behind, hundreds, all with empty eyes, all with his face. He realized that the forest wasn't calling him. The forest was waiting. He wanted to get back what he had given away. He wanted Robert,